Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Meter, an MPSC podcast. I'm your host, Mike Byrne, joined today by Chair Dan Scripps. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
And we're joined today as well by first-time guest Dave Chislea. He's the director of the Gas Safety and Operations Division here at the MPSC. Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Good morning. Good.
We're glad to have you. So today we're going to talk about a really important topic, damage prevention as it relates to underground utility facilities. But before we jump into that, I'd love to give Dave a few minutes to tell us a little bit about his background and the work that he and his team do here at the Commission.
Yes, we do several different things, primarily mostly related to pipeline. So my background previously was I was a inspector doing pipeline safety inspections, and now the manager of the pipeline safety program and the division. So our day-to-day responsibilities include pipeline safety inspections of the pipeline operators in the state, ensuring compliance with a set of safety regulations. Additionally, we review applications that are before the Commission related to new pipeline infrastructure. We also get involved in reviewing the rate cases for issues related to expenditures for O&M and capital, and then also the topic we're here to talk about today, which is damage prevention. And we review damages, we investigate complaints, and we do some own inspections on our own merit for issues related to damage prevention to all underground infrastructure.
So, yeah, as we talked about, today we're going to talk about damage prevention as it relates to underground utility facilities. Dave, maybe you can start off by telling us why this is such an important topic and why safe digging is really important.
So prevention of damage to underground infrastructure is very important because there's all kinds of vital utilities that are underground. You know, communications lines are important for issues like 911, airports, even the utilities use the communications line to communicate with their facilities, whether it's generation or pipeline, compressor stations. So the infrastructure, the telecom infrastructure is very important for those types of issues. And then with regards to the other utilities like electric and natural gas, it's important because there can be issues related to interruption of service. There can also be issues related to damage to those facilities. You know, if it's an electric facility, it can cause electrocution. If it's a gas facility, it can cause issues like injury, personal injury, and or property damage if those facilities are damaged. And then also the other typically municipal facilities like water and sewer, so there can be interruption of service related to those, and or there can be property damage related to those if one of those are damaged and are either leaking or causing damage to other people's homes or that type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, I mean, all of this is sort of unseen infrastructure, right? That it's there literally beneath our feet, and I think we take it for granted. But these can be, and by their nature, are sort of inherently dangerous if they're not treated with the respect that they deserve. And so something as simple as sort of digging in your yard or having what seems to be a pretty straightforward project go on, and as the temperatures start to warm up and people get out there and want to do some of this work, it's important to remember just how large the consequences can be, including explosions from natural gas lines, electrocution, as Dave was talking about. So there's real dangers that are there. They're manageable, but that's why programs like MISDIG exist, so that we can make sure that we're taking the steps necessary to keep ourselves safe and to keep our neighbors safe as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like there is a lot of infrastructure that's not visible. It is underground. There's some real danger to coming into contact with that infrastructure unintentionally. Dan, I heard you mention MISDIG. What exactly is MISDIG? How do we go about finding out where this infrastructure is if we're trying to dig underground?
Yeah, maybe I'll start, and then Dave, I'll turn it over to the expert on this. But MISDIG is a program that's been around for a number of years, not just in Michigan but other places as well. And it's a simple service. You just call ahead. You can do it online as well, and different folks will come out and mark the lines that are difficult to see otherwise. So those flags or the little paint that you sometimes see are marking everything from electrical wires, telecommunication wires, water and sewer, as Dave was talking about, natural gas pipelines that are underground, and that allows either you as a homeowner or the professional contractors that you might be bringing in to understand exactly where those utilities are located and to take steps to avoid them as they're doing those projects. But Dave, I know that's the sort of 10,000 foot level explanation. I'd love to have you get more into it.
Yeah, I'll start with a common misconception with regards to MISTIG. MISTIG is a data center. MISTIG takes calls from professional excavators and homeowners regarding digging projects, and they pass that information on to the utilities, and then the utilities are responsible for marking the facilities. A common misconception is the fact that MISTIG does the marking. MISTIG does not do the marking. The responsibility for locating and marking the facilities is for the utilities. So the utilities do all that. And the utilities do that in varying ways. So some utilities mark their own facilities, and some utilities will hire contractors to mark their facilities. So there's a bunch of different ways that the actual marking is handled. MISTIG also is responsible for education. So you may see the billboards on the sides of the roads or other information. They educate excavators across the state. So MISTIG does have responsibility with regards to that. And to the chair's point, you can either call 811 or you can place a ticket online. They have an online web entry ticket. And right now, currently, MISTIG is receiving the majority of their tickets. Between 85 and 90% of them are done online. Just a thing about how to call and how to place the call. The number is 811. It's very simple. A couple of years ago, my dad was doing a repair in his septic at his house, and I told my mom to call before they did the work, and my mom said, "What is the phone number?" So even though we do all this education, MISTIG and all the utilities are educating folks, it is easy to forget what you need to do before you dig. But the main thing is, if you haven't done it before, just call 811 and they'll walk you through the process.
Yeah, and it really is it's that simple. I actually came home a couple weeks ago, and actually it was the end of last year, and there was a village truck out in front, and he was like, I'm here to mark, and I had no idea what he was talking about. But my wife, to her credit, sort of had called MISTIG and had started the process. And as a utility regulator, it's always exciting when the utilities show up at your house to do the marking. So over the course of the day, not only the village for water and sewer, but the natural gas folks and the electric folks were out. And by the end of the day, we had a number of markings in the grass and flags in the lawn, and the project went ahead and was done safely.
And so I think, what I'm hoping to get out of this episode today is that it's not just exciting for utility regulators when MISTIG or when the utilities show up to mark their facilities, but that everybody can get on board. Call that number 811, really important. Okay, so as it relates to MISTIG and calling 811, I assume that there's like a legislative underpinning or legal underpinning for the need to do this work. And Dave, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the law in Michigan and what that requires, who it applies to, and sort of what the consequences might be if it's not followed.
Yeah, certainly. So the one of the big differences with the Michigan law, most states have a 48-hour call before you dig. In Michigan, we have 72 hours or 3 business days. So three business days prior to digging, there needs to be a call placed to MISTIG, or as many as 14 days in advance. If you can call further in advance, that's better, because that gives the utilities the opportunity to plan and work their schedules around the work for locating. So we are definitely encouraging folks to call as soon as they can and as soon as they know that the work is going to be done. Something that's a little different and a change recently that MISTIG did is the scope of ticket. And the scope of ticket varies from state to state. All the states have a different scope of ticket. So in the urban areas, MISTIG has a quarter-mile max for a scope of ticket. So for a homeowner, a single address, that's fine. No issues with placing a ticket for a single address if you're going to be working in that one property location. And then for the professional excavators who are doing bigger projects, the scope of ticket in a rural area is a max of 1 mile. So that is something that's a little different from state to state. Pretty common from state to state, but very important, is hand exposing facilities that you're going to either cross or be within 4 feet of. So the law requires that if you're going to be excavating within 4 feet of the marks, you need to hand expose that facility before digging, just to verify the accuracy of the marks. The other thing that's unique to Michigan, and some other states do have this also, but is to verify that all the utilities are locating. And that can be done online, or again, a call back to MISTIG. And you can do that just to make sure that anyone who should have marked their facilities, that they've all been marked. So the system is called positive response. So you just make sure that everything that should be marked is marked.
So what are steps that someone should take when preparing to dig? It sounds like, you need to call in advance, but what are some other things that people should be thinking about doing?
Yep, the main one is call. The second is to wait to 3 days and or to the dig start date, whatever the dig start date is on the ticket, again, to verify the positive response. That's a requirement of the law, to make sure that all the facilities that should be marked are marked. And then when you're on site, something that's good to do is just to verify visually that everything that is there is marked. So if there's any utility that looks like it is not marked, you can call back to MISTIG and you can specifically call out a utility that wasn't marked, and have that facility owner come back and remark. And again, the hand exposing, if you're going to be crossing or working within the 4 feet, that is very important too, just to verify the accuracy of the marks, and verify that you know exactly where the utility is, especially when you're going to be digging with power equipment around the facilities. And then if you have any questions, additional assistance is available, and you can call MISTIG and ask for additional assistance. If you can't find a utility that you expected to be there, the marks are inaccurate, anything that has a question with regards to the location of the facilities, call for additional assistance.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that maybe isn't as fully realized is that this isn't just for professional excavators, that it's not just for major projects. Sometimes the biggest threats are the ones that we sort of think, oh, this is no big deal. It's just a little project in my backyard or something like that. I'm only going to be digging a relatively small distance into the ground, but those can have really serious consequences as well. And so I think sometimes people have the misconception that MISTIG is just for the professionals, that it's only if you're have a full backhoe on site or something like that. But even those relatively small projects, just at your house, those also need to be called in.
Yeah, absolutely. Annually, there's about 4,000 damages to underground natural gas distribution systems a year. And of those 4,000 damages in 2024, over 1,200 of them were related to no call to MISTIG. And of those 1,200, over 400 of those were homeowners. So homeowners are causing damages to underground infrastructure also. So it's important, no matter the size or the scope of your project, to call before you dig.
So, I mean, that's, again, gets to a really important point here, that this is a safety-oriented program. That's really the reason that the laws are on the books, and that we have the system that we have in place. And, hopefully everybody gets this message and does make that call. To the extent that you don't, there are, sort of fines or penalties that could be assessed. I wonder if we can talk a little bit about that. Like, what are the consequences if you don't call 811, you do end up in an underground facilities damage type of situation? What can happen?
Yeah, so the law allows for up to a $5,000 penalty for anyone who either damages a facility, or if a utility doesn't live up to their responsibilities with regards to marking the facilities. A minimum of a $500 penalty for the first offense. So definitely exercising that authority, the commission's authority with regards to that, and issuing penalties. Common for those who are digging, who are excavating, not having a ticket. That's a pretty common one, like we talked about before. Not hand exposing the facility, so they don't hand expose it and they cross it without exposing it and damage it. So those are two very common issues that occur for those who are digging. For the utilities, two common issues are not marking the facilities. So facilities aren't marked, not marked timely, and or marked inaccurately. So in addition to the penalties, if the excavator is at fault, they can be billed to by the utility for damage of the facility and repair. And those can be pretty significant too, especially if it's a large facility, whether it's a large cable or fiber, or if it's a large gas line, the damages can be very significant.
Yeah.
So thanks for talking through that. And I think the work that you and your team does is focused on making sure that those who are required to call do so. So that's both interacting with professional excavators to try to make sure that they are doing what they need to do to get those facilities marked. Also to raise awareness with homeowners as well. But then working with the utilities to make sure that they are upholding their responsibilities as you talked about.
Dave, one question that I have is who's responsible for this? So if you're a homeowner, for example, and you've got a project and it's a project that's significant enough that you're bringing in professionals, is it the homeowner that is responsible for calling in the ticket to misdig? Is it the professionals that they're working with? Any guidance for those who might be listening, thinking about taking on a new project this spring?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good question, and a question that comes up often and in a lot of different spaces too, depending on the activity. But it's always the responsibility of whoever is doing the excavating to have their own ticket. So even in the situation where you may have multiple contractors, say you're a homeowner and you're acting as the general contractor for multiple excavators on your property, each one of those different utility or different excavators that you hire have to have their own ticket. So whoever is excavating has to have their own ticket. So homeowners should not be calling in a ticket for an excavator. And if you're a homeowner and you go down to the local rental company and you rent a piece of power equipment before doing that work, you should also have a ticket. So it's very important. We also encourage folks that, speaking of rental companies, that are going to have a graduation party in their yard and are going to be pounding stakes for a tent in their yard, to encourage the rental company that they're renting the tent from to have a ticket also, so they're not driving a stake through one of your utilities or one of your neighbor's utilities. So even just things like that, always have a ticket, no matter what's going in the ground, whether it's a piece of power equipment or a stake or a shovel.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you sort of clarified that on both parts, because I think sometimes you've got a project that you're taking on, you want to make sure that it's done safe, but even if you're not the one that's supposed to call it in as the homeowner, you might be the one dealing with the consequences if your contractor doesn't. I mean, if they hit your gas line, that can be a big deal, obviously for the homeowner. So it's important, even if you're not the person calling in, that you're making sure that the contractors that you've hired to do that work have taken steps, not just so that they can avoid the fines, but so that you can avoid the consequences of damaged infrastructure at your home or business.
Yeah, and it can go beyond just the damaged infrastructure. There can be property damage to your property also. So yeah, it's very important to make sure that who's ever excavating on your property has called before that excavation happens.
Yeah.
One thing that can also happen, I think, is you make the call, but if the lines don't get marked in a timely fashion, you might become sort of impatient, like, hey, I tried, but I need to move forward with this project. What kind of advice would you have for anybody in that situation?
Yeah, there's controls in place for that, so it's just making a call again to MISTIG, and making sure that they know that you have a previous ticket. You inform that you have a previous ticket, and they can put a request in for that ticket to make sure that that gets priority to get marked. So yes, don't dig without the marks. If there's no marks, make sure and call back and have those marks. And then ultimately, that's some of the complaints that we deal with when things aren't marked timely or mismarked. We investigate issues related to those types of things.
So it's at least 3 business days, but to your point earlier, if you can call further ahead, it just gives the utility a bit more time to get out and make sure they do it. But if they don't, there are consequences to the utility, but ultimately making sure that the digging is done safely is the most important part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've covered a lot of ground today, and I would love to maybe ask both of you for some closing thoughts. What are the big takeaways that you would want to leave our listeners and viewers with? Dave, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I would say back to call and verify the marks. Those are the 2 most important things, and you verify the marks by carefully hand exposing. If you find something that's not marked, ask for the additional assistance. Call in the ticket again, make sure that everything gets marked. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway. We're undergoing a campaign this year where we're going to send education letters out to everyone in the state who had a damage last year without a ticket. And then going forward from that, we're going to start doing enforcement. 1,200 tickets annually a year without a ticket, or 1,200 damages a year without a ticket. That's a significant amount of damages that we need to really start reducing.
Yeah, my two or three takeaways. First of all is that this applies to everybody. It's not just the professionals. If you're doing a project in your yard, even as you talked about, Dave, like putting up a tent in the yard, it doesn't have to actually go that deep in order to damage it. Actually, I don't know if you can talk about sort of the depths that are at play here, but it can be relatively simple projects, just digging a post hole or something like that. That still requires a ticket. So I don't know if you want to talk at all about sort of the depths that are implicated here, but I think that's a common misunderstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And the depths vary based on the utility and the property and what's happened to that piece of property over time. So the depths for a service drop for a cable or telephone to your house can be very shallow. It can be just a few inches deep. Typically, the electric and gas service lines would be, in the foot 12-inch range, as far as their depth. And then out in the road, the infrastructure is going to be significantly deeper than that. But you don't know what's happened to that property over time. There could be soil erosion. There could be previous excavation activity that happened over those utilities in the past. So they can be shallower or deeper than what you expect. So that's why it is so important to verify the marks by carefully hand exposing things before you do the excavation.
Yeah, I'm really glad you covered that, because I think that's one of the misconceptions. This is just a little project, and but if you're talking about, you could sever the fiber that not only serves you but serves your neighbors just in a couple of inches, or hit a gas line sort of within the depth that you're talking about for simple things like putting up a fence or driving stakes for a graduation tent. I think that's one of the things. The second is that this is a really easy process. You can do it online. You can just call 811 literally, and that starts the process and gets the utilities out there to do the markings that they need to do to keep things safe. And the last thing maybe is that just to brag a bit about our fantastic folks that you work with, Dave, in the Gas Safety and Operations Division and damage prevention, but you in particular as well. I know that our gas safety folks here at the Commission have a national reputation for excellence. They're looked at as leaders across the country. And you in particular, I think, are serving as the president of the National Association of Pipeline Safety Regulators. Yes. So it's a big deal and well-earned recognition. I appreciate your leadership here at the commission and what you do every day on behalf of Michiganders across the state, but also the leadership that you've brought to some of these national roles to make sure that some of the best work that we're doing here in Michigan is getting a national attention as well.
Thank you.
I want to echo the chair's comments. I think you and your team are fantastic and are known as national leaders, so appreciate all the work that you do. Appreciate both of you for being here today. We will make sure to share the contact information for Miss Dig, so 811 and the website. You can see that below. I also hope that you subscribe, make sure that you're checking out Behind the Meter anytime that you're getting your podcast diet in. And yeah, look forward to seeing you all again behind the meter.